All right, so I sat down and I watched the found footage film Evidence, which I have not seen in a long time. And, this was one that ended up on my top 10 lesser known found footage films, the list I made back in the day. I made it years ago. And I have not seen it since, nor did I own it. But Guillermo Gonzalez sent me a copy of it, and I was like, oh man, I'm really in the mood to watch some of this. So some of these found footage films, I get on found footage kicks, and I've talked about the found footage thing enough on the channel. If you don't like it, you don't like it. I'm not here to convince you otherwise anymore. I'm over it. But I really like it, as you know, and so we're going to talk about it. I did take a decent amount of notes. I will say I did like this a little less this time than I did the first time. I do still think it's a cool found footage film. My biggest issue with the film on this viewing was one of the main characters, the guy who's filming, is incorrigible. He is just dreadful. Now, this is not the actor's fault. This is the way the guy is written, and he performed it the way that he was supposed to have done it. But my God, what an asshole. Now, he does meet his demise, and earlier than one would anticipate, so good riddance, and it helped the film for me for sure. The film definitely goes from kind of like, we'll not say 0 to 100, but we'll say 10 to 100. There is some Blair Witchy type things happening within this film, but they kind of all culminate into this very action-packed third act. The first two acts are slower build-ups, and that's not a bad thing. You're creating atmosphere, intrigue, stuff like that, and anticipation for that big climatic scene, which they definitely deliver on, but within the means of their budget, which was very small and impressive for what they had to work with. So now, when they do find the end of this movie, spoilers obviously, when they do get to the end of this movie and they're running around this government compound, that's this like secret government project, this must be the most underfunded government project in the history of like black ops would be like, well, no, black ops, because ops is for operations, right? So yeah, some black ops type fucking shit like that. It's like got to be one of the most underfunded ones ever. So anyways, this also probably features one of the, if not the most weakest reason for why they're out there filming. So the guy is filming this documentary on his friend, but this is of no interest ever in the film. Like, they focus on this so little that you're like, why did you even bother with this? Why don't you just say that you're out in the woods and you're camping with friends, and I'm just going to film it because I want to document our fun time in the woods. They're like, oh, the guy, I think they do it. I know why they do it. They do it because they're trying to, at first, make it seem like he's going to be fucking with them. This is all of the setup for that. They talk about how he's played pranks in the past and they've went too far, and he seems to be cold-blooded about them. As he gets shittier and shittier throughout the movie, it makes it very apparent that he's in on this, or so we might think, but then of course it ends up not being true. So this is why they do it, but I feel like as the reason for why the people would have come out there with him is to make this documentary, and for us to believe that they think that they're making a documentary when they're really not filming shit. Like, for instance, they rent or take this RV, borrow one, I don't know what they do with it, but they have this recreational vehicle, in case you don't know what the acronym RV is. They take this thing, right, and they're like, well, who's gonna drive? And he's like, well, I need to film this guy because this is the documentary, so I need to be free. He needs to be free from the wheel, and the other girl needs to be free for whatever reason, I can't remember, doesn't matter. But then the blonde, the hot blonde who fucking shows her titties in the opening of her sequence, which is a added bonus of the movie, she is like, no way, like, not doing it, not happening, I can't drive this thing, whatever. then it cuts to like, you know, an hour later, she's driving, no problem, seems totally fine. They pull up, no issues, and she's in a good mood. They get out and they film almost nothing. There was like a literal 15-second sequence where he's talking to the guy, but it's not like in an interview. It's not any kind of interesting way. It's just him filming him and them talking casually. And it's like, is this why she needed to drive? Is this why you needed to push a girl into doing something she straight out said, like, I don't want to do this, I can't do this? But it's like, oh, well, we need to do this. We need to get this amazing footage for our documentary that we're making on him. Now, one could argue we're not seeing the entire footage, right? We're not, they only showed us what we need to see in this movie to be entertaining and to go along with the story. But to me, this is important to the story because it, you know, legitimizes the plot of that he's making this documentary on this guy. So why isn't there more focus and emphasis on the fact that this guy is somehow interesting enough to make a documentary about, so that you can kind of try to play that subversion later on, thinking that this is the bad guy that's in on it when he really isn't? But why would they even be out there to film that shit in the first fucking place if they're not actually doing anything with the documentary? He even tells him at some point in this movie, if you are just going to film me getting drunk and falling around, no one's going to find this entertaining. So they do not have a plan. He has no plan in mind, but he's just out there filming, talking regularly. What is that? What could that possibly be? No one would watch that movie. So for me, that's not a good enough excuse for why they have a camera. Just straight up them having a camera is a better excuse than them trying to explain it with this pathetic excuse for for a reason. So that does not work. And then there are so many instances, and this is just one of those things you have to accept in found footage most of the time, where you're just like, bro, you would have put the camera down. Especially the women at the end. Almost the entire third act of this movie is completely senseless when it comes to the fact that these girls would continue to keep filming. The only thing I can say that they would keep that thing for would be its flashlight, which is what they use in a lot of these types of movies. But for one, they wouldn't need to be recording. For two, she wouldn't be looking through the thing to make sure things were like focused and centrifugally put in the middle of the camera for these scenes. So, you know, it's being filmed way too well until it's not. In the end credits, get out of here. They have this like extra credit sequence, and it's like, oh my god, that was giving me like a headache. It was so, you know, all over the place and cut so horribly and so chaotically, should I say. No, not for me. So that is that. But there's just so many times to me where it's like they would not have the camera anymore. There's no way when they were running around and they're being chased by somebody, they'd be looking back and then going and looking back. Why would she be filming that? She's not using it for a light anymore. There's zero reason for it. So to me, that's a flaw. To me, that's a flaw. I think it is your responsibility in a found footage film to explain to us why they'd be filming. And I know a lot of people will be, dude, it's found footage. You just have to accept that. And I will. And I did, because I do still like the movie. But I'm not going to not make it a flaw within the film. It is a flaw within the film if you cannot explain to me in a decent enough way why people are still filming when chaos is happening like this. There's just no way. There's no evidence for it. And to me, it's lazy. So that being said, yeah, moving on. And then this guy, this fucking dude who's out there with these girls and his friend, and they're, you know, I like the chemistry between the guy and the girl, and the guy and the guy, and, you know, whatever. Like, I think that's fine. Like, I think there's actually a couple funny lines, you know. And I smiled or I laughed, and I was like, oh, this is cool. But when this guy starts to be a dick, and this is supposed to play into the further idea that he is one that is part of this. But regardless, he starts being the biggest dick. And if you're with a guy like this, talking to any of you ladies or guys, you know, if there's dudes out there dating dudes like this, if you're with a guy like this who says stuff like tells you to shut the fuck up. Now, he says this to his not girlfriend, but if your boyfriend is telling your friend to shut the fuck up when she's just concerned that her boyfriend might be missing, and then mocks her when she's like, okay, let's do that. I'm going to do that. And then when you try to tell him to stop, he tells you to shut up. Then he calls you pathetic. Then he calls you dumb fucks. Then he calls you retarded. Then he calls you dipshits. Then he calls you a bitch. All within the span of 10 minutes, an hour, maybe. Something very short. He shouldn't be calling you any of these things ever. He shouldn't be talking to you like this. If you're with somebody like this, leave. This is fucking like straight up abuse. If you don't, just because you're not being punched doesn't mean you're not being abused. Anybody who's gonna fucking like smash in, and it's not playful. It's not like it's like, you know, there's an understanding between each other. I have this with my brother. My brother and I can call each other literally anything. The worst things ever. We can bring up things about each other that we know are true and are so mean, and we still say it to each other. And we have this understanding with one another that that's funny, and everything is on limits. Nothing is off limits to me and with him. And we have that understanding. So I would call him all of these things and much worse. But there is that understanding, and there is nothing abusive going on there. I love my brother Nathan more than almost anyone outside of my children. He's my favorite person on this planet for sure. And I feel like it's because we're so, you know, candid, and we like we have zero humility because of how humble we keep each other with the constant shit talking. And I think that this is something guys, you know, expertly can navigate through and do on a regular basis. They talk, as I've always said, men talk shit to each other's faces and talk wonderfully behind each other's backs, and women are the exact opposite. Shit talk to the like really now, hey girl, and then as soon as they walk away, that bitch, blah blah blah. Now, of course, exceptions to every rule. I hate to generalize, but in my experience, that's true almost every single time. That's true almost every single time. So, except for like gay men, like really flamboyantly gay men, but typically they act like women, so that's why they're like real, like, oh hey. But then as soon as they walk, you know, as soon as that person walks away, they're like, shit, girl, that guy, that, you know, he's a piece of shit, and blah blah blah, you know. Yeah, not good. But what I'm trying to say is that you cannot allow yourself to be, you should have better respect for yourself than to be with someone who would treat you like this pathetic, dumb fuck, retarded, dipshit bitch. What is this, John Bender's fucking father? Know-it-all asshole. Let's see. Then we get the restricted area. The monster that's chasing them. Now, in the credit sequence, from what I can tell, it's so chaotic, so fucking hard to tell what's happening. But is the thing that they capture an actual monster? Or is it a person in, like, those jungle fatigues where they, like, you know, look like they're bushy? And with like an alien, like, I don't know, the host is the symbiote. I don't know what they would call these things. Sorry, symbiote. I think there's another name for them though. But they're like attached to the guy, and they're controlling him. Is that what's happening? I really could not tell, or if that was the thing's face. Was this the guy who came up to the campsite and was like, hey, and then they took over his body because he was like some like creep that was out, or was it like, did they take over one of the dudes that was working there, or is it just straight up a monster? I couldn't tell. It was so chaotic. I was like, did I see what I think I just saw? Was that a person? And if it was it that guy? Because he was out there with a gun and he never comes back. Not that I remember. So I don't know. I don't know what that is. I don't know what the end is trying to stay here, but yeah. So yeah, they're just like running around, and it's a restricted area, and guns are getting shot, and jeeps are pulling up, and they're jumping in, and there's these big action sequences, and they're driving through like really cheap, empty, buildings, and then they're jumping in. They're going to these houses, and these houses are really shit and poor. So yeah, as I said, this is the most underfunded project, like secret government project ever. But this is what they had, and for what the budget they had, which I can only imagine was like nothing. All these big action sequences with like what I would see as zombies, but none of those zombie type characters are being controlled from what we can see by anything attached to their face, like a face hugger and an alien. I don't fucking know. I don't know what's happening. I assume that's got to be the monster, but when I saw it for a second, I was like, did I miss something? Did I see that wrong? Is that an actual human being? I don't know. And I tried to see what it was, but I could not figure it out. And I got the fucking Blu-ray, so I should be able to tell better than anybody. And then the one girl, the blonde with the tits, they both have tits, but the one we get to see, she gets her head blown off. It's a CG effect, but it's kind of cool and it's unexpected. The other dude, the piece of shit guy that you want to die, he is disemboweled, and then the other guy that goes missing and that he doesn't seem to be all that concerned with, and seems to think, I don't understand this one. He tells them like, oh, he's fine. He grabbed his pack and he's headed back to the city. In what? You all came together in the RV. And he can't have taken the RV and you'd be okay with it, because then you'd be stuck out there. So, and then she's like, he wouldn't leave without. Leave how? I totally missed something there. How could he have left and went back to the city? I don't understand that. Can someone explain it to me? I just watched it. I'm asking for an explanation, but I can't fucking catch everything. And sometimes I'm oblivious to things. It happens. I get shit for it, but it happens. I can't catch absolutely everything when I'm watching 6 movies in a row. You try talking about fucking 6 movies in a row, all in one sitting, and not fucking misremember some things. So yeah, I don't know. But anyway, she ends up getting away. They seem to be doing experiments on her in the end, or like checking her over or something. I'm sure they never let her out, and they store this in evidence. But somehow we saw it because we're so cool. But yeah, so it's a cool film. Not as good as I remember. That character is annoying. The action sequences and all that feel very cheap. But for a found footage film, I definitely think it's one people should watch. And I'm glad to have it in my collection. So thank you for sending it to me. Thank you for staying and hanging out. I should have done this for a Monster Monday next week, but oh well, too late. Adios.